Hi, welcome to your birth chart reading. Yeah, thank you so much for, doing my contest. And it's so wonderful that you won the free reading and that we're able to connect in this way. So, yeah, thank you so much for inviting me into your life, and sharing everything that you did in your message when you booked the reading. So, yeah, I have your message in front of me. And so, you kind of shared a bit about who you are and what you do. And yeah, you're kind of looking at, money things, gaining and managing a stable income as a creative, self-employed single mom of a toddler in a really expensive white place. Yep. And to keep the home that you moved into, I guess, was it last year, um, or probably sometime recently. So yeah, that's really amazing. And how to be a better parent. It's so unspeakably hard. Yes. Romantic love. And yeah, so I'm gonna touch on all those three areas. And, I also just like wanted to start with, yeah, just kind of getting into the basics of your birth chart, and sort of the things that were sticking out to me when I was looking at it. So, I don't know if you've had a birth chart reading before, but essentially what a birth chart reading is a snapshot of the sky the very minute that you took your first breath. So right away, the snapshot of the sky is much more complicated than just your horoscope, right? So when, we read or write horoscopes, really what we're looking at is just a very small but significant piece of the sky when you were born. But the birth chart takes into account the whole sky. So all of the planets, all of the zodiac constellations, all of the houses. The houses are basically, you know, we take the whole sky and we divide that sky into 12 different pieces, and those pieces are called houses, and they represent 12 different areas of life, like home and family, friendship, money, career, love. And so when we look at the birth chart, we can see what's happening in that snapshot for someone in each of those areas of life, and which areas are like shining more than others, which areas you're preoccupied with more, which areas are a little bit more loaded. So that's something that I look at when I'm interpreting the birth chart. And I look at what kinds of conversations the planets in the sky are having with one another in that moment that you were born. So there's like all these layers of like what we look at, as astrologers. And those conversations in the sky, it could be like, oh, your Mercury and the moon were arguing with each other, or this kind of dynamic conversation was happening. And those conversations, when we interpret them, those kind of translate into our inner dynamics, right? Like our inner tensions, our inner contradictions, our push and pull within us. And, those conversations speak a lot to like, what are the nature of our core kind of struggles, or challenges that we're met with in this lifetime? Where are our core gifts and opportunities and strengths? And, where are opportunities to like heal and grow, and work through challenges in the best way possible. So that is everything that I'm looking at. And so, of course, December 16th, you're a Sagittarius, but actually you're like a super Sagittarius. You have what we call a stellium in Sagittarius. And a stellium is basically a cluster of a bunch of planets in the same sign or the same house, all at once, huddled up with each other. And so it's like a concentration of a specific type of energy in someone's birth chart. It's really funny, like, all the readings I did this week were people with Sagittarius stelliums. I don't know how it works out like that, It's just like, it's just kind of funny that everybody who ended up booking a reading for this time, like, oh, this is what we're talking about. But, yeah, and And this cluster for you is in the first house of identity. Um, and the first house is also very, related to our very first birth moment. What was happening for us when we took our first breath. And really, we look at the rising sign, and so the rising sign is literally the constellation that's rising over the horizon the very minute that you were born. And then, that develops into the first house. And so you have Sagittarius on the rising, and then you have Uranus, Mercury, Sun in Sagittarius in the first house, and then you have Neptune in the first house. Neptune just moved into Capricorn, but really what we're looking at is a lot of first house energy in your chart and a lot of Sagittarius energy in your chart. So what does that mean? Well, the rising sign, like I said, really indicates the quality of breath that you took the very first minute that you arrived into the world. And Sagittarius risings, they come into the world and right away they're like, I'm about freedom. I'm about that future vision. I run on faith. I run on instinct. I'm here to help the world grow, into its most positive potential. So that's kind of the nature of like your very first breath. And it's really emphasized by the fact that then you have all this Sagittarius concentration in your first house of identity. And when the sun, so your sun, is in the first house, this makes someone who's very, very shiny out in the world. Like you have a very strong personality, strong convictions, strong beliefs, strong sense of inner truth, and a strong sense of like, yeah, I'm here on a mission. I have something to do in this lifetime that's very important, and I'm excited about it. It's my adventure, Nobody really is here to do it but me, and I'm here to pursue it. At the same time, and I'm going to, along with that, the fact that your Mercury is right next to your Sun in the first house, you're a storyteller. Yeah, of course. So I'm not at all surprised that you're like, I'm a writer, I'm an artist, I'm an activist. Yep. That's Sagittarius with Mercury in the first house, Sun, rising, Mercury, all combined. I'm an activist, I'm here. And it's, I think too, with a lot of activism, you're here to help our movements grow higher. You're here to bring a higher vibration to activism, because I think there is something where activism kind of can get stuck in this smaller kind of perspective, and there's something about your soul that's here to say, no, like I'm here to help everyone be accountable to their own integrity, to a truth of a different world, a different, a way of being, a way of believing in ourselves and each other that is in relationship to something higher, the cosmos, like a larger, expansive spiritual truth, not to just, kind of get stuck in just butting heads and arguing with one another, which sometimes Sagittarians can get stuck in, especially in an activist space. And this is kind of like an internal dynamic in you, I think, that it's sort of, always calling yourself to go higher, always calling yourself to be in deeper integrity with yourself. And the way that you do that with yourself actually helps our movements. So this is someone, first house people are very much like, we can, feel selfish. First house, people can feel selfish, especially who are activists, because there's a role that you have to play in activism that is actually about embodying your own self-development, your own life adventure, something that is actually yours and yours alone. And it can feel selfish because you're not doing enough for the community. And yet we need people to be first house people in this community. We need people in the zodiac to be first house people, because there's something about showing the community by example. showing, the movement by example, by like holding yourself really strong and like pursuing your own freedom. That is actually really important for you to do just for yourself, but it's not just for yourself. It shows everyone else, what is possible and uplifts that vibration, like I was talking about. But it's hard. It's hard because, you have Mercury, Sun in that first house, which of course is like this shiny, bright person, this like person with really strong ideals and a really strong voice, a storyteller. But you also have Uranus and Neptune in there too, which make things loaded. The outer planets, wherever they are, they make things loaded. And Uranus in the first house, like, is someone who's like, you're always kind of an oddball, so while there's so much that you have to give to the community around you, you might feel throughout your life that you don't really completely fit in or belong, or you might find yourself in places where you're just kind of like the oddball in that community. And this is kind of emphasized by Pluto in your 11th house, which means that you are incredibly powerful and transformative for your community, and you do this by kind of like embracing your unique voice, your revolutionary sense of being that not everyone is always going to be able to accept or understand, and especially with Pluto in the 11th house, like some people, might find you intimidating, or, they might have their own shit around like fear. And I think this is kind of manifesting right now in terms of what you're saying, that, yeah, you're living in a really expensive white place, right? And so you're this powerful, like, black person, revolutionary person who is, just by being you, transforming the community around you. And by doing that, you're kind of triggering everybody's shit, that isn't your fault. It's not your job to fix, right? There's so many like reasons why people are socialized to not be able to embrace someone like you, and yet your job in your birth chart is to embrace that revolutionary, unique, powerful, transformative part of you. And that might mean a lot of grief and shedding, and letting go throughout your life in terms of your relationship to community, letting go of attachment of like what other people think of you, how people see you, and really grounding into the truth that, you just gotta be you, and other people will have their journey, and some people will be close to you, the people who really will have your back and support you and love you for who you are, and other people who do for a time and then don't anymore, or other people who won't ever, like they're just those people on their own journey, right? But yeah, this is something especially with Uranus in the first house. It's like you're not meant to conform to the blueprint of what you see around you. And this is, I think, more and more I'm kind of seeing people who have like a heavy first house. I mean, the first house is Aries house, right? And so these people like are path blazers. They're game changers. They're inventors. They're entrepreneurs, of just in their identity. It doesn't necessarily have to translate always into your career, which obviously it does for you. But, you're just an entrepreneur in life. You're just like a natural inventor and a natural path blazer. All first house people are. And the thing, though, with this is that often people who have such a concentration of this energy in their first house, they have experiences where really early on in life, you needed to break free from the circumstances that were right in front of you. And this is where it's hard for a child, right? Because when you're young, you you think the world around you is your whole world. You don't have a larger sense, you don't have that larger perspective. You don't have the knowledge. Like, you don't have, like, you're just, your brain hasn't matured in that way yet. And even so, you still, right from the get-go, right from that first breath, had a sense, like a gut feeling, like that there is something more, that there is something outside of this. There is a larger, expansive truth. And even before you understood at all logically what that was, or what that actually could translate into in terms of, like, physical manifestation, more and more you understand what that is as you grow more into an adult and more into your adult life. But yeah, as a young kid, there's a confusion, right? Because you know that there's something more, and yet, like, you're like, oh, but this is my only path. This is the only way. This is the only blueprint or model that I see for, like, how life should be, or it will always be around me. It's confusing like that. And the challenge with this, especially with, like, Uranus and Neptune in there, is that you're gonna, often people feel when they're young, like, oh, I guess I should just conform them if I want to be of service, or if I want to be loved, or, if I want to have genuine connection, like, I just got to fit myself into here. And really what the healing and the learning is as you get older is that, like, no, you're actually meant to embrace your unique shape, your unique identity, the oddball in you, the one that is a little bit, like, just running on a different rhythm than everyone else around you. And that actually is what brings you the community that you need. It's what brings you the love you need. It's what brings you the peace of mind and stability that you need, is really, like, saying, I'm going to be this thing that isn't supposed to fit into this world. I'm going to grow into that version of myself, and that's actually how I'm protected. That's actually how I get all my needs met. And so this is a lifelong journey, right? And so it gets easier as you get older. But yeah, this is sort of what I wrote down. Like, there's this thing in your birth chart, this need to break free from the circumstances right in front of you, and a wider, expansive perspective, and taking action on your gut feelings. That's what keeps you grounded. So that's kind of Sagittarius first house stuff in a nutshell. It's like, when you are in touch with your faith, you don't always understand it. You don't always understand why faith is telling you to move in this direction, or take this decision, or do this thing, right? But if you can really hone into that voice, then you're golden, And it's interesting. I was listening to a podcast a while ago with a different astrologer, and she was talking about, how do you tell the difference between gut feelings that are fueled by faith and spirit, and how do you tell the difference between that and gut feelings that are fueled by fear and scarcity? And what this person said, her name is Jessica Lanyadoo. She's a really awesome astrologer, if you haven't heard of her. But what she said is, when our instincts, when we get those kind of lightning bolts from the universe to our gut, and it's really driven by faith and instinct and spirit, it's neutral, actually. It's not attached to a feeling. It's not even attached to, like, how you feel about a certain outcome. It's just something that you just know, and it feels peaceful, and it feels calm, and there isn't any, you don't actually have attachment to it. That's how you know that this is what my intuition is. That's the word. They're asking, what's the difference between intuition and fear, right? That's what your intuition is. And when you're kind of guided by fear, driven by fear, you have a lot of attachment. There's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of, maybe control, or like, if this doesn't happen, if I don't do this in this way, then everything is going to fall apart. Like that's a fear-based response, right? And so it's not about making the fear-based response go away. In any of us, right? But I think it is, especially for Sagittarians, like a really good thing to understand the difference between like when your intuition is speaking to you and when your fear is speaking to you. Um, and yeah, I mean, just as an example, like for me, I thought about that. I'm like, that totally makes sense. It's like when I'm really connected to my intuition, like I don't feel anxious about it, like, and it's not even, like it's just a truth, even if I don't like it. So for example, like I was, a few years ago, I was in a relationship with someone, and this was at the beginning of, we started dating, and we like were in love, love. It was like really like, that honeymoon phase or whatever, and we were super into each other. And I remember we were at Pride, Toronto Pride together, and it was raining, and there's still like so many people on the street, just like watching performances and like whatever, and it started raining, and so everyone got out their umbrellas, and I just remember looking up around me and toward the sky, and I just saw this like expansive sky that was like shedding its tears, and all these umbrellas around me. It was such a beautiful memory, and I had this knowing, this truth that just spoke to me, and it was like, this isn't gonna last forever, and that's okay. And I was getting information about that relationship, right? And it was just so clear. It was so true. There was no anxiety around it. It was no, like whatever. It was just such a calm, like sense of truth that came to me and just landed in my gut in this like beautiful kind of picturesque space. um, and and I know that that was my intuition, because it wasn't what I wanted to hear. I was in love, and I was like, I pushed it out like right away. I was like, I don't want to know that, like I don't want to believe that. Like I want to believe that this is going to last, And it didn't. We broke up after 6 months, right? But that's how it's intuition, that you just feel it calm and true and real in your gut, and it's comforting, even if you don't like what it's saying. It doesn't actually matter, like, what your attachment is to it, So, yeah, that all to say, it's like those moments are your clarity, It's like when you receive information with that kind of truth and peace. And I have no doubt that you do receive information like that. Sometimes maybe it's about, like, it might be clouded by, like, all this other stuff, all these worries, fears and insecurities and scarcity, and actually, like, trauma that's, like, actually happened to you, or, like, in your family history and your ancestral history. Like, all these things kind of get clouded, right? But there's a part of you that's just, like, always, like, connected to that, like, calm sense of knowing and being. And that's a really big thing for you throughout your life, is to just, maintain and nurture a relationship with that line, with spirit. And the more and more you maintain and grow and develop and nurture that relationship, the easier your life gets, and the more peaceful life gets. I think that your life gets easier just in circumstances around you, like the actual, money stuff, stability, job, love. But those external things get easier because you get easier on yourself, and you have a more and more clear sort of developed relationship with spirit. And so, yeah, I mean, at this day and moment, like, I think, It's just about like, yeah, where are you in your relationship with that line? And, kind of maybe track like the moments that you feel like that and like what happens right afterward. Does like the ego come in, the fear and the trauma and like the expectations and the hopes, whatever it is, come in right away and they're just like, it's not anything to fix or change. It's just to bring more awareness to like what happens, and how does your intuition function? Like, what is the rhythm and the flow of your intuition and when you receive those messages? Because like, yeah, they're coming through all the time. And I think that's part of why you're an artist and a writer. Like, you're channeling those messages through your art. I don't know if you can hear my cat in the background. He's meowing a lot. It's because he's playing. That's what he does when he plays with his soccer ball, so don't be alarmed if you hear that cat voice. I'm going to get a glass of water, and then I'll be right back. Oh. Funny boy. Okay. Yeah. So, what I wanted to talk about is some of the major conversations that are happening in your birth chart. At that moment of your first breath. And one of them is this a conversation called Jupiter trine midheaven. So, what this says to me right away is that you're very, very special to your ancestors in your lineage. You're like the chosen one to your ancestors. You have a really, really strong spirit team. You have a strong ancestral team around you. They're so powerful. They're so like strong-willed and like strong in the mind and the heart. And they're funny too. They have a sense of humor, and they really, really got your back. And there is something, so the midheaven in the birth chart is our point of career. It's who we are in our public, it's our public persona. It's our professional identity. And Jupiter is the planet of expansion and growth and luck in a lot of ways. Jupiter is, a very protective sign. It's sort of Jupiter, I'm understanding Jupiter more and more as the part in our birth chart where we receive gifts that we don't have to earn, we don't have to struggle for, and we're never going to lose them, even if we think that we might lose them or we could do something to, it's that kind of unconditional love. Like, no, you don't ever lose this. Like, no matter where you are, up or down or high or low, like, we always have your back and we're always going to make sure you're protected. And here's the good news. Jupiter lives in your second house of, resources, income, earning money. It's also our self-esteem, our possessions, our belongings. The second house is also our body. It's everything that belongs to us. And the fact that this Jupiter is having this beautiful conversation with your midheaven, and it's very pronounced in your birth chart. Like I haven't actually seen, I don't remember the last time I saw a conversation that was this loud. Like a line, a connection, an orb, a chord between like this part of your career and this part of the resources in your birth chart. Like it's so potent. It's so loud, this conversation. Like I said, I don't remember the last time I saw a conversation this loud. Um, and that is such good news for, your questions and struggles around financial stability. So this does not necessarily mean that, um, that someone's going to be rich or poor, when Jupiter is in the second house of earning money. Because, yeah, some people who are really, really wealthy and are born into wealth, you know what I mean? Like, they might have Jupiter in the second house. But some people who, have come from, like, poor working class families or, like, whatever, like, their own financial situation is not always easy. Like, sometimes, yeah, that can be a manifestation, too, of Jupiter in the second house. But really, what the heart of it means is that there's protection around you. Regardless of how much, like actual like wealth you do or don't have, like in your family or like history or whatever, but there's protection, so there's something, this, to me, what this feels like is like your ancestors knew that like, yeah, you are so special in terms of what you are going to give to the world at large, to the public. And they're like, this one, like you're the chosen one. Like they're like, this one is so important. We're going to make sure that this one always has what they need to get by. They always are going to be protected around resources, whether, it's by, like donations that end up in your bank account or by people who like help you out in a certain way, or just, there's ways that like they're never gonna leave you in a place that you can't recover from. Right? And so I feel like this is kind of reflecting in what you said. I mean, like last year, most of the time you were homeless, but you survived well and you're super proud of you. And I'm like, yeah, your ancestors are super proud of you. And they also like, they got you back. Like they made sure that you're taken care of. And that was there the very minute that you were born. I feel like, yeah, this is kind of what I wrote down when I was preparing for your chart. I'm like, this, it feels like your ancestors are like, this child will give something to the world and will never let this child be without protection. We'll always make sure you have the resources that you need. And, as you kind of get older, it's, and like I said, the more you kind of embrace your unique way of like how you want to be in service to the public through your art, through your activism, through your writing, like you have a very strong potential to be able to make money through who you are as a public persona. And I see, like, in your message and also in your chart, like, the struggles around that and how it hasn't been an easy road until now. But, I just wanted to say that to begin with, like, that's the biggest conversation happening in your chart is like you came here knowing that you had protection and that your ancestor team always has your back, whether you are conscious of them or not, And that as you kind of grow more and more into your public identity, like that kind of flow of resources and money and stability, like will get easier and easier as you get older. And so I just like, yeah, like that chord is definitely there. That flow is there, like really strongly. And then at the same time, the next loudest conversation in your chart is a conversation from Saturn. So Saturn's what we call squaring your Mars. And Saturn also rules your house of earning money. And resources and all those things. Saturn rules your second house. So Jupiter lives in your second house. Saturn rules that house. So here's a very interesting combination, and this is why it's complicated, right? So it's like your potential to receive income and abundance, financial and physical abundance through your career is really strong. However, it's complicated because of Saturn. And what this feels like to me is that in that first breath, it's like you took that first breath, you're like, yeah, I'm here to be free. I'm here to free myself. I'm here, my freedom frees other people. I'm here to be in service to the matters that I care about and to the planet, and to my movements of, that I'm invested in. And ancestors are like, yeah, I got your back. You're going to be this writer. We're going to help you out with that. And then right after all of that kind of shiny, bright, bold, pursuit and commitment to purpose. Right after that, boom, Saturn shows up. And it's like what Saturn did was make you feel the weight of everything that you're carrying in your lineage. All the pain, all the suffering, all the lost lives, all the love that, what do you call it? Could not be reconciled in their lifetimes. That spiritual sludge of everything in your lineage, and not just your lineage, but the world at large, like all your people, like the pain of your communities that you care about and that you're connected to, like you felt that weight. And it almost came as like, okay, I'm the chosen one. I have this mission. And then, oh my God, I feel the responsibility of that, the weight of the world, the burden, the duty, right? And this anxiety around like, what if I'm not good enough? What if I'm not perfect enough? What if I can't do it? It's so big. And yeah, so that's a thing. It's funny because I don't know. I really like Buffy, the TV. If you follow my work, you might know that. I talk about it kind of often. But it's kind of Buffy's struggle, right? She's the chosen one. And she's just this beautiful protector and this incredibly strong fighter. And she's a hero, like not because of her physical strength, but because of how she loves, right? And her whole central struggle throughout the whole series is feeling the weight of the world, being the one chosen one to like, save the world from vampires, whatever, right? Like there's some of that in you, you know what I mean? That's the kind of combination between this Jupiter and Saturn, right? This Jupiter is like this gift that like you didn't have to fight for, you don't have to struggle for. You always have this. You always have this like beautiful gift to give to the world, and you can't ever lose it, even if you feel like sometimes you might. And then the weight of that comes right after. And the thing about Saturn, so Saturn lives in your 12th house of spirit, subconscious. And that's why I also am like making this connection between like the spiritual sludge of everything that your ancestors and people have gone through and the world, the weight of suffering in the world as it is right now. There's like, that's the 12th house is like people who are really spiritually connected to pain that isn't yours, but you feel it in your body and you feel it around you. It's like an egg that's always surrounding you, and it does make things foggy, and it does make bring a lot of anxiety up in terms of like that perfection and like, am I going to be good enough? Like all this responsibility that I have, and then also Saturn ruling in your second house of earning money and income and resources. Wherever we have Saturn, we're a late bloomer, So I can see, this is why I'm saying that, like, yes, your potential to earn money through your career is, sparkly and shiny, and it's going to take you a minute to figure out how to do that, how to make it work practically. And in the meantime, it's like, yeah, your ancestors are going to help you out, bolster you up, in the meantime, especially, when you're younger, um, it's sort of like you're caught kind of scrambling around trying to, make the pieces come together, and your ancestors are behind you, always kind of lifting you up and making sure that like you're okay at the end of the day. And as you kind of get older and older, and so I'm, more into your 30s, 40s, 50s, you'll be much more able to sort of sit in the calm and peace and stability of that spiritual relationship. And that's actually what makes the money flow. That's actually what makes, the financial stability work. In a much more kind of calm and peaceful way. And it's really, really hinging on your relationship with spirit. That's Saturn in the 12th house. And so probably when you went through your Saturn return, which was, a few years ago when you're like 28, 29, that was probably a very big milestone for you to come to terms with your relationship with spirit, And I assume that you do like have a relationship, right? Because you mentioned that you did like cord cutting ritual, and so it seems like you already like have a relationship with the otherworldly, with energetics. You understand energetics to to whatever extent you do. But I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if that kind of part of you really came into clarity around age 28, 29 during your Saturn return, and that's what really turns your life around. And the more and more you embrace that relationship as like a primary relationship in your life, the more and more your life kind of turns around for the better. But yeah, going back to what I said, like it takes a minute to figure out the finances, because like with Saturn, we are a late bloomer. And with Saturn, it's always more difficult when we're younger. And when I say younger, I mean like, our 20s are very difficult, and once we take that Saturn return, when we make that shift, then it slowly gets easier and easier. So you're just really kind of in the first leg of your Saturn return, the first few years of age 30. And so these pieces are really starting just to fall into place now. And so I say this to, it's, you don't have to beat yourself up or, put too much pressure on yourself. Or, be hard on yourself around like, why haven't I, figured this part of my life out yet? Like everyone has Saturn somewhere, and this part of your life always takes longer. But it does come into place because we're really, really committed around it. And, again, I'll say like your relationship with spirit is key to making your financial situation work. And I say this, I have a similar thing. My Saturn is in the 12th house, and it rules my second house. And I'm too, like I'm 6 months older than you, so I'm turning 35 soon. And I'm just like, I haven't figured out the financial stuff yet, but it's slowly coming into more and more of a groove around like, yeah, okay, I'm feeling like the sustainability part is slowly coming into place. And for me too, it was like, yeah, really actually needing to embrace the unique thing that I wanted to do and not try and, those voices of doubt that say like, you have to get a practical job, or, you should do this practical thing, or you should try and conform, you should try like this or that. That's actually not the move for you or for me, The move is, yeah, it is to just follow your unique purpose, and your relationship with spirit helps you receive the resources that you need to bolster your relationship with like just what you're here to do as a writer and an activist, and allow yourself to receive that, those gifts, because they're always going to be there. So my suggestion for you is, in terms of 2019, how to gain and manage a stable income in this really expensive city. So because I'm saying like spirit ritual, that's prioritize that. prioritize your own healing, your own spiritual healing. It's like clearing out those blocks of like, because yeah, you feel the weight of the world, but you're not actually meant to carry that. It's actually meant to fuel your voice, fuel what you have to say as a writer. It's meant to fuel your own personal journey. But you're not meant to, fix and save the lives of everyone on the planet. You just can't. You don't have that power, right? But you will change the world. You will have a huge impact if you actually just focus on yourself and your spiritual healing and just like the work that you have to do, your writing, right? And so that spiritual work is really important. That's how resources come to you, more and more abundantly. And, what you can do as a practical ritual every month, even if you want, is like a money magic sort of ritual. And so I'm sure you might have like money rituals or whatever, but I'm really like looking at this as a very practical kind of ritual in terms of looking at, okay, the month ahead, my priority is, my work, my writing, my joy, my health, my relationship with my child, as a joyful and loving relationship. Those are my priorities. Okay, what resources do I need to support what I'm here to do and what I'm here to experience? And so come up with a number every month. And what I do too, is like I come up with 3 numbers. I come up with my bare ass minimum, my medium, and my gold. So I'm like, what do I need just to like get through the day, get through the month? And what would be like a good, comfortable kind of place where I can give myself a little bit, some luxuries? And then what would be my ideal number? And really just get clear about like what number do you need every month? What number do you need for the year? What's your goal for the year for those 3 numbers? And the trick here is when you are figuring that out, a bunch of stuff might come up around like, oh my God, how is it going to work? Or it's impossible. Or like, I don't know, like there's a lot of grief and shedding that might come up, and that's fine. But the trick is that you don't need to know how. You don't need to know how to get to the answer. You just need to know the number. You just need to know, and even maybe not even a number. It's like, do I need support like, childcare support, maybe, and then somebody offers or volunteers, you know what I mean? So it's like resources can come to you in forms that isn't just money, you know what I mean? And so that's where you really want to get clear, like, what do I need to support myself this month? And that's your money magic. That's your ritual. And so you're really sitting with the practical thing that you need, and you're clear about what that is and what that number is or what that resource is, and then you just let it go. You let it go and you live your life and trust and listen. Listen to where that Jupiter protection is coming from, because it's coming somewhere. It's like, oh, this person suddenly offers this opportunity. Oh, this comes in, right? And so it's really hard to sit with that, right? Because it's like, it's super anxiety ridden, right? It's like matter of like, having a home or not, right? Having like food to eat. It's so important. However, the more you can feel grounded in your relationship to your ancestors and spirit, and just clear about like what the practical needs are, then there's actually a pathway where Jupiter can be like, oh, you need that specific number here, or you need this specific, you need to buy this thing for your kid. Okay, here's somebody donating that. You know what I mean? Like, that's the kind of money magic that I think could really help you this year and beyond. And parenting is really, I can see why it feels really hard. I mean, obviously it's hard. Obviously it's hard being a single mom and a single Black mom and, all the things, right? And it's there in your birth chart. This Saturn square your Mars rules your 5th house of children. And so that's also where that first like boom, like feeling of the weight of your people's suffering is also, boom, like the weight of what I'm here to do for my children, for the next generation. And so that weight when you were younger might have stifled your voice, might have made it hard. Maybe like when you're young, it might have manifested as like bullying or people saying like who the hell do you think you are, like to speak, right? And so I see that there's a challenge in really manifesting who you are as a writer and a speaker in your voice. And also that translates into your relationship with parenting, right? It's like that trauma, that weight, that like feeling of like, am I never going to be good enough? Just like that need to live up to some kind of idea of perfection because, it's in your ancestral memory. It is a life or death thing, keeping our children alive, right? So yeah, it's like heavy and it's hard. But really the healing around this, and this I'm looking at your Mars and Aquarius square that Saturn, like parenting, like your gift to your child and like your gift as a parent is the way that you are here to give this child a set of spiritual teachings. That's kind of focus on that. Like that's your gift for this child, and that's what this child needs from you. And that's your Mars in Aquarius, because Aquarius is like knowledge and revolutionary knowledge, and connected to the Saturn is spirit, right? And so your own spiritual healing is what you are supposed to then give to this child and just like share your knowledge with them. And everything else is sort of beyond your control. There is something about Aquarius that's like, you know what? Like, my role here is just to do my part. Like, I cannot be responsible for everything. I cannot control what my child goes through. I cannot protect them from absolutely everything. I can't control who they're going to be or the choices that they make, I can't be perfect as a parent, and I'm not meant to. I'm just meant to do my best. I'm meant to do what I can. I'm meant to share my purpose with this child, and that is exactly enough. That's more than enough. It's extraordinary. And this is Aquarius, right? It's the sign of the collective, where really when we're in the heart of Aquarius, we're like, we understand that community is intergenerational, right? And our job here is to just contribute something very important to this moment, to this child, and then they take it and they run with it, and the next generation they run with it, the next generation they run with it. And that's something your ancestor team understands very very strongly, right? They're like, we know you're just here to do your part, and your part is going to change the world for the next generation, and that next generation is going to change the world, right? So I think part of, how to be a better parent is actually the work is forgiving yourself for your own limits as a mother. You're not supposed to be perfect as a parent, right? I think about this a lot just with my relationship with my mom, and I've been kind of like coming to a lot of clarity and insight over the last little while in terms of like, there's a lot that I didn't get from my mom. And as a kid, there's sort of wounding around that, right? Like my mom didn't care about me. She always cared about me, but she didn't always give me care the way that I needed care. She didn't understand how. She was just doing her best, And as an adult, I'm now like, that was actually an important learning for me, that I didn't get everything from my mom because I was supposed to be taken care of by spirit. I was supposed to be taken care of community because I am too, supposed to give to the world, to give to community. And that's too much for one mother to take care of all of that. I have to be held by my collective. I have to be held by my ancestors, And when I can really understand my mom and accept her for like what she is here to give me and all the gifts that she did give me and the strength, and her purpose, the way that she was and is an incredible mom, and accept her for like what her strengths are and what her limits are, then we can really just have like a beautiful present relationship where we just can love each other for who we are and not kind of expect that one person is going to be the end all be all for anyone. And that's so hard. That's so hard to come to as a parent because you love this kid more than anything. And that's, so many parents feel like that. Like I'm responsible for fucking everything, right? Especially with that Saturn in your chart. However, what Saturn really wants you to do is live within your own limits and understand what those limits are. And, understand like what your gifts are and what you're here to give and what you're not in control over and what you're actually not responsible for. So I think the more and more you can really hone in on like, this is what I have to give this child, right? I'm here to, when they're young, I'm here to provide them resources, I'm here to make sure they're cared for, and that they have like a fierce protector on their side, and that like I'm here to teach them about spirit and about life and about community, I'm here to, break through the lies that society, might tell them, and everything else is out of my control, and so the more you ground in that like spiritual purpose, ground in your spiritual purpose as a parent, then you are more easy on yourself, and that actually allows you to have more space and freedom to just be present with your child and witness them grow up and be a guide and support for them versus feel like you have to be responsible for absolutely everything, which you don't. You get to be a human. You get to be messy. You get to be, and that's actually important spiritual teaching that I think children need to learn from their parents. That's so important for me to learn about my mom, right? Like my mom's not perfect, right? So, yeah. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about, love. So I'm going to talk about love in the context of what's kind of going on for you in 2019. Just looking at your planetary movements, this year really is about you owning your identity as a writer, a futuristic, revolutionary voice, and a storyteller. You're really coming into your own in this way. And there might be some shedding and releasing, right, of like old kind of paradigms, grieving maybe old people, right? Like just, kind of just what you're saying, like the cord cutting that you did with your ex. It's sort of letting people leave who need to leave. And just like owning who you are and this kind of new shiny version of yourself. And what you're going through this year too is something called a Jupiter return. And so Jupiter is returning to the same spot that your sun lives. And so your sun in Sagittarius is here in the first house, and then Jupiter is returning to that spot. And it does that every 12 years. So really what you're doing is you're starting a new 12-year cycle of regeneration, of rebirth, and renewal, which is what Jupiter is about. And I was really struck when you were talking about your mom and how this is a major turning point in your life. How long ago was 34? Yeah, so it was more than 12 years ago that your mom passed away. But there is something about your new cycle that you're starting that I think is related to your mom's death. And it is so significant that now you're at the age that your mother was when she was killed in a car accident. And I think there's just something about that, right? Where you're always thinking about that age, 34, and you're coming to that age, 34, and it's almost like a part of you is like reliving that death, that she was at that age by you being this age. And for you, it's that Jupiter return, which is about rebirth. It's about regeneration. It's about the hope and promise of a new life. It's a new adventure, a new 12-year cycle around the sun. It's a time where we just say, you know what, these are the things from the last 12 years I'm not bringing with me, and it's just like a breath of fresh air. And for me, that really feels like now that you've crossed that threshold that she didn't cross, she's also so strongly with you, and she gets to live again through you. And this is like a year of coming alive in such a different way than you have in the last, since you were 15. It's like a mountain that you got to the top of, I believe that when people die, they see that top of the mountain that is their life, and they see that wide perspective of their whole life. And you're doing that now, and she's doing that with you. And yet you get to continue in this body. And she's also with you in that, and so excited. So, I don't know, there's just something about that that's like, it's new life. It's like now you really get to live. You get to live without this almost weight and threat of death that was on your shoulders, that you're kind of living through with her, Yeah. Trying to find the words for it. I hope that makes sense. But I think that happens, right? When we know like our parent was a certain age, like we almost relive it with them. And then now you're alive. What are you going to do? And that's what Sagittarius is all about. Even if you had a different story than what you actually have, when I see a Jupiter next to the sun in Sagittarius, it's like Sagittarius isn't here for any destination. They're here for the adventure of being alive. Sagittarius is like, I'm in love with each day because each day is a miracle, And so I think there is something about 2019 that's very much like, sitting with gratitude for the miracle of being alive and receiving that love every single place, at every small little place that you can feel it. That's where you get those really, being in that state of gratitude is how you really can strongly get those bursts of intuition that are like really true for you. And allowing yourself to receive more. In being in that place of gratitude and intuition and listening to where you are being supported, you receive more. So here's where we talk about love, because you do have some, transits to your point of partnership this year. But actually next year in 2020, you have like a lot of activity around your planet of relationships and house of relationships. It looks like there could be like, people coming in, new love, excitement, new way of being in relationship with people. It's kind of a little bit of like a swoony, dreamy, like sweeping off your feet kind of feel. So I'm talking about Neptune and Uranus is coming. And so it could manifest in different ways, right? It could be like a new spiritual perspective. It could be, like really good for career, but it is possible for love to come in this way too. And I think that this year, it would really be beneficial, like the work that you do in terms of receiving more, like in terms of resources and being supported, just like in your work, in your voice, that also prepares you for receiving more in your relationships and receiving like love and relationships that are genuinely supportive and genuinely authentic and like equal, because that's, the trauma that I see in your birth chart, right, is that you're coming from a lot of relationships that weren't equal. There are power imbalances. There was a lot of maybe codependency. There was like, fear, like maybe abuse of power. And a lot of that, I think, comes from like an ingrained thing of like, I have to give more to my community than I'm allowed to receive in return. And that translates into like, I have to give more to my relationships than I'm allowed to receive in return. And so the healing that you're doing around allowing yourself to receive more resources from your ancestors, support from your ancestors, physical support from resources, really uplifting who you are as a writer out in the world and saying like, yeah, I want people to value this as much as I value it because it's damn important. All of that is actually preparing you for better love to come into your life, whether that's this year or next year. It is like a rewiring of like how you have been in relationships before and how you will be in relationships, in the future, right? So this year and next year in particular is like a very potent time for this transformation around relationships to happen. And I think you're setting the seeds for that right now and just this kind of rebirth and kind of, yeah, the more you can really hone in that relationship with spirit and hone in that ancestral relationships who like really want to support you and support you hard, you're golden. So, yeah, I'm going to leave that there. Hope that was helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything that I can clarify that, wasn't clear for you in the reading. Just shoot me an email. Otherwise, yeah, I'm so happy that we had this chance to connect, and I'm wishing you all the best. Bye.